Hello, Tone Deaf Monk here. THIEAUDIO Monarch MKIII. Now, got a lot to say on this one. I just came off of the THIEAUDIO Hype 10. I was a little disappointed in that one, not for the fact of performance-wise, but that I couldn't call it the hippie because it wasn't high performance, it was hybrid performance. So anyway, moving on to relevant shite. Now, the Monarch MKIII is on the selling for $1,000, $999. So it's really only like $100 more for the over the Hype 10. And both of those, if you pay $100 more, which seems a lot, you can get a custom design because the stock shell faceplates are mundane. This one's a bit different from the Hype 10 in the fact it uses EST drivers in the top end, not the Knowles Super Tweeters. And it's also using a different configuration for the bass, where it still has the Impact 2 clamshell drivers face-to-face firing out through a tube, but it's missing the Sonyan BAs to do the bottom end. And that will play a factor in this. Now I gotta say something. I was expecting a wow factor from the build-up and the hype and the thing around this set, and for me, I feel let down. I didn't get an emotional connection with this one. This IM, and I was expecting bigger things, and maybe that was part of the problem, is I was expecting so much more. Now, I own the THIEAUDIO Oracle, and I love that IM to smithereens. If you haven't watched my videos before, understanding my preferences, I like neutral to warm. Tonality wise, I like my bass, but I like my bass in quantity and quality. And when it comes to quality bass, I like more impactful bass. I like low sub bass, but I think in order to get proper drum hits and attack and decay, you need some mid bass in there to make percussion sound correct. And I don't get that with these clamshell drivers. I didn't get it with the Pen-On Quattro, and I don't get it with this one. I get sub bass. I get bass, but I don't get textured bass. But I'll go more into that. This IM is another U-shape profile. So if you're not sure what I mean by that, so there is a bass shelf, and I'll pull up a graph here. There's a bass shelf, and the mids are very flat, smoothed out, evened out quite a lot, and then it rises up into the highs, the pin again. That's what that's called. For overall tuning, it's really quite nice. So some things I'd like to mention, like the THIEAUDIO Hype 10. This one really needs to scale up like the Hype 10 did. So when you listen to this particular IM on low volumes, you get really a mid-centric sound. So you get just mids. That's really it. You don't get any of the impactful bass, or you don't get any of the sparkles up top. It just really becomes mid-centric. And until you start juicing it up, then it comes alive. So what is this going to mean to you? It's going to mean that you're not going to be running this on a phone, and you're going to be running it hopefully on a better source that has more power. That's going to be important to get the most out of this set. And the treble doesn't kick in too, because this one's EST powered on the very, very top end, to give you that really added special something that the ESTs do. So if I were talking about the tonality, and I think I'm going to start rating how I hear the bass, how I hear the mids, not just, I'm going to give you a number too. And I think this will be my first one that's going to do that. And I think when I edit the video for the Hype 10, I think I'll add that in there, but I haven't talked about it like I'm talking about this one. So bass, overall, I gave it a 6 out of 10, and I'll tell you why. So, and that's important. I can't just throw a number at it and then not say why, right? So this is why I'm telling you that I would give it a 6 out of 10. And this is my preference as well. So, bass has nice depth to it in the hits, in the sub bass, but it lacks texture. You listen to Hawkman Yim, Poem of Chinese Drum, and the drops from the different drums. It plays the notes, but it doesn't have the texture to make each note with a attack and decay to what it should sound like to me, and what it has sounded like with other IMs that I've listened to that are my reference for that. And I'll talk about that as well, and that's why this is going to be a little bit longer one. Now, so percussion, kick drums, it's missing the bit of the attack and the snap. The bass sounds like more of an old school speaker sound, and some people really dig that kind of sound signature. For me, it's just missing something that doesn't make it sound at 6 out of 10. If it had more of that into the lower mids and mid bass, then I think it would sound more correct. And that's where the Hype 10 kicked the Monarch MKIII's ass. With the Sonyan BAs, it added in what this one is missing. So let's talk about now the progression as we get up into the mids. And I gave this one an 8.5, so it did very, very, very well. Mids are very, very flat and neutral. So I think they're perfectly balanced in the mix. So the bass doesn't overpower the mids, and the treble doesn't overpower the mids, and the mids don't overpower. It's not vocal forward, or is it recessed? So that's when I say it's very balanced. I am. Now, of course, it has a very big U shape, so it's not exactly ruler flat uncolored, but it's balanced enough, right? And enough to follow the track. When you turn up the volume, the mids do come a bit more pushed out into the mix. So that's one thing with both of these IMs that I found, the Hype 10 and this one here. I think the vocals overall have a really nice tonality, colored tonality. And sometimes I thought the male vocals were missing a bit of the weight, and it really was track related on that one. So where female vocals I thought came across pretty much spot on every track, where male vocals were a kind of a hit and miss. And again, that has to do with that kind of a bit scooped out in the mid bass, where in this particular set, I don't think it adds enough in there for every song for male vocals. Where there's that fine balance again. If you add too much into that, you will make them thick, and then you'll muck up female vocals. In this case, I think there's missing an element into that as well. Overall, timbre and tonality, 5 out of 10. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, the drums are missing the kicks. The drums don't sound like, and this is critical listening I'm talking about. This is picking this IM apart. So this is not necessarily like an evil, got 5 out of 10, I'm going to totally skip it because this thing sucks. It's not what I'm saying here. But the timbre and tonality, 5 out of 10. So if I take my references, for my Soft Ears Twilight, for me, I haven't heard another IM that made vocals and made instruments sound as good. Like, I haven't heard anything better than that. So when I'm giving it that wasn't a 5 out of 10. That was a 7.5 out of 10. Woo, okay then. And that's actually pretty good. Okay, upgraded, free, no charge. Get 2.5 more points. That's not my fault. This is my writing. And resolution and layering, 7 out of 10. It's the same thing. I mean, it does a very good job, but is it class leading? No, it isn't, right? So that's kind of my point when I'm trying to express how this thing comes across. Now, this is critical listening, right? This is exactly that. So you're listening for its flaws. And its performance, right? So it's easy to do reviews and say, it does this, and it does this for my library, and it does that. But how does it sound, right? That's the tricky one, and I like to be a little different. And I tried to convey to you how I think it sounds. Now, let's get into the highs, the nice sparkle and details. H10 I thought was too much for me. Some of you will love that added zingy. For me, it is too much. And it presented vocals and mids too forward, where this one was more neutral. But I think they did the highs extremely well. Those ESTs are well done. And they add that something extra up top. So I think the highs are really, really well done. Talking about stage, and again, this is all very subjective, right? I thought it was very good. Definitely not crazy 3D. Where I thought the Hype 10 was very more let your EJ07 kind of spatial cues and placements, much better. This one took a step back a bit in its staging. And I think the spatial placements is average, and the layering is maybe slightly above average, but it's definitely not standout. So what I mean by that is you have something playing, you have a track playing, I'm closing my eyes, I'm picturing this, right? So you picture along with me, okay? Close your eyes, just listen. So Joe Satriani, right? In some of his tracks, you can clearly hear depth. You can hear placements of, and I forgot what was the other one that I was listening to. It was a string track, and where you could hear the bows in, where they were at mid-level, they were playing violin, so they were higher, and then there was the cello, so cello's playing down lower, but you can actually hear the bow on the strings, and the placement of that. So that's kind of a spatial placement. And the other thing that I mean by that and that has to do with depth. So, I mean, you're in a jazz track listening to some Jimmy Smith, right? He's in a jazz club. You can totally tell. I've been and listened to him in jazz clubs. Not even in jazz clubs, in like restaurant I heard him. And I'm sitting 15 feet away, and I can picture it in my mind on certain IAMs, but not this one, where, the bass is playing forward. It's 6 feet from you, and it's on your left. And Jimmy Smith is playing his Hammond organ, and he's 12 feet from you in the center. And then you've got a trumpet player playing on your right, and he's also forward, but he's not as forward as the bassist or Jimmy, right? And that spatial placement where you could totally pick that out. And on the Monarch MKIII, I don't get that. I get a stage. And again, this is all could be different from ear to ear and person to person, but this is the way I heard it for me. So, I mean, I didn't think it was crazy 3D at all. Where I thought the H10 maybe had better for that in that regards as well. So in the three THIEAUDIO'S that I've heard so far, my Oracle, the Hype 10, and the Monarch MKIII, here's how I'd kind of rate the three for me. So, and I'm doing a ratio here of musicality versus technicalities, right? Musicalities is just, overall for me, how engaging it is, how I can relate to the tracks, and how the IAM presents itself on an emotional level, really, as well. So kind of that plays into a bit of a factor. I mean, for me, I think the Oracle plays 80% musicality and 20% technicalities. It's not a super technical IM. It plays more on the warmy, cozy, sit back and chill set. The Hype 10, I thought was and in this case, I thought it was 40% musicality and 60% technicalities. So way more technical set, but not as musical. And where the Monarch MKIII, I think, comes across as a perfect mix of musicality and technicalities. They did a standout job conveying that and kind of measuring that balance. You don't want to make it too standout. You don't want to make it too 3D. You don't want to make it, and you want to have enough tonality and the correctness and the vocal, not vocal forward, all very neutral. And they do a fantastic job. So 50-50 straight across the board. Now, let us talk a couple tracks just so you get, and just to reiterate some of the things that I said versus the Hype 10, just to give you an idea where listening between the two. Again, overall, I won't go track by track, but the Monarch MKIII sounds warmer and smoother and more coherent than the H10. That's what I came across listening to all those tracks, switching out each IM with the same source and going from there. So if I were talking some of these tracks, where the hell is my notes? Okay, here we go. Keith Don't Go. Let's start off with this one from Nils Lofgren. And this is where I'm listening to, it's also tonality, technical details. I know he's got two mics. I know there's one on the guitar and there's one that he uses for singing. And in some IMs, you can clearly pick up the height difference of the different mics. And with the Monarch MKIII or the Hype 10, I couldn't get that. So that's was kind of interesting. Overall, I think the organic and smooth musical, and here's this track. I mean, you clearly noticed it needed juice to get going. So for me, I've listened to it on all three sources of my most powerful sources too. So the Gishelli E2 amp, 2 watts, the X-Duo XDO5, 2 watts, and the other topping A90D with a whopping 10 watts of power available to it. So it's got some serious juice. So, and you can really tell on low volumes, mid. If you listen to mid volumes, the THIEAUDIO'S are a great choice. If you listen to at low volumes, they're probably not a great choice. And if you listen to extremely high volumes, probably not a great choice. So mid-volume people, these are for you. And you really got the EST going on this track. I mean, in his guitar in this track and the playback, you should have that extra little zing from him hitting the strings on the guitar. It's a live recording. And where the H10 certainly did this better than the Monarch MKIII, I just found it was kind of missing that extra little zing, but it played it back musically. Okay. Enter the Sandman. Enter Sandman. There is no the. Don't add it in. Alyssa Cara, in this case, not Metallica playing it. Bass and sub bass. I'm listening to it on here again, but there is sub bass there. There's the hits there, but it's soft. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. And it's not all that impactful that it should be. It's missing that mid-bass hits for proper kick drums, and it doesn't have it. Vocals are spot on. They're natural. They present very naturally and clean. But listening to this critically, it was like, where the hell is the slam, the mid-bass? And it's just not there to make this song... make this song accurate to the recording as I think it should be. Passion by Gypsy Kings. And again, this is if you listen to Gypsy Kings, the guitar, it's really the acoustic guitar, right? It's the Spanish guitar. It has good tonality. The weight of the strings sound very good, but you can tell that they're not pitch perfect. It's missing that extra little, it's missing something. Rackham, Dead Can Dance. Now, I listened to this as a live recording, and I'm listening for the stage overall. Now, if you listen to the Soft Ears Twilight, you can clearly pick out it's in a larger studio, and you're in the studio audience. And this is actually where the Monarch MKIII did pretty good, accurate representation. You could clearly tell the venue. Now, in other live recordings, I don't get the sense of spaciousness. If you listen to Metallica's S&M 2 album, where it sounds like you're in the recording or studio or the mixing booth, right? You're up in the seats and 100 feet up. or 200 feet up. And then there's, the Metallica's playing in the middle, and then the San Francisco Orchestra is playing all around them. And in some IMs, you can get a really good sense of how big the stage and venue is. I don't get that with the Monarch MKIII, and I've tried different ear tips. I tried the Duno stage S&S tips, and the Divinus Velvet is what I ended up with. I tried the Osla, and I didn't get that. I couldn't get that, even with the different tips. And I tried everything. I tried different tips. I've tried all the sources. All my friends are here. So I was talking about this track, Joe Satriani, the 1.45 mark, a minute 45 in. There is a ascending A major in his riff. And this is where I kind of downgraded the technicalities. Like Niels Lofgren's song, Keith Don't Go, this song, you can tell on certain IMs that you can hear the ascending A major. You can hear it increase in his guitar. And with the Monarch MKIII, you couldn't get that. You couldn't... It changed the tone of when he was doing the ascending A major, but it wasn't standout. And if you weren't listening for it, you wouldn't pick it up. And watch his video of this one. It's a really hard replay to do. Really hard. And very few can do it. I don't think the Monarch MKIII hit it. It doesn't hit that resolution. Canera Loki, the Fat Frequency Grand Maestro, the Pen-On Impact, all did it quite nicely. The Oravetti OH700 VB did it. So there is, and those are up there, right? They're dedicated. But you don't have to go that far. Even the Simgot EA500 LM can do it better than the Monarch MKIII. So listen to that track. All my friends are here. Joe Satriani, minute 45, and try to get that ascending A major, and you'll see what I mean by that. So again, on this track, you're missing the mid-bass hits. It's not there. And it's not just a preference, I guess, part of my preferences, but I don't think the Monarch MKIII plays it to what it was intended to be, right? And again, some people are going to love the softer sub-bass, focus bass, and some people, like me, who are looking for more of the correctness. And it's not there in that track. So now here's another one, Solo por ti, Amiwana. So I use this song in, I just noticed that every time I look down at my notes, the camera freaks out and probably tries to zoom in on some other shit. I'm sorry about that, but I have to read my notes. Gypsy Kings, the instruments, so on there's I should find out what it is. But he's playing some kind of, sounds like a kazoo or something. And it goes from right top up high, and then it goes left down, and then right up. So I'm not sure if the guy is, or another person is doing this and then moves it to a different hand and starts playing it down below. That's what I think is happening, and then switching back over to the right, or maybe it's mixed in that way. So you can... On certain IMs, you can get that. You can get that spatial placement. And you could hear it on the Monarch MKIII, but it didn't do it standoutish. In Between Two Lungs. So I'm using this track, Florence and the Machine, to vocal tonality, right? Correctness. This was a wonderful playback. Great on female vocals, colored in a nice way. Where sometimes I found male vocals to be a bit off in tonality, I found female vocals on the Monarch MKIII to be standout excellent. Songbird by Fleetwood Mac. So nice piano and vocals again, but switching out to different IAMs. You could tell the piano is actually missing some weight. There's the piano doesn't have the correct tonality, and the vocals are not quite right. They're very good, but critical listening, they're not quite right to what I think it should sound like. My Immortal Evanescence. So I'm ending with this track. So for me, when I was listening to the Totem, the Tonem, Pen-On Impact, it brought a tear to my eye. It was played back that well. It moved me emotionally. And then I came to an epiphany about the Monarch MKIII. The Monarch MKIII for me in this track, it was unengaging. I'm going to leave it at that. Now I have the opportunity to buy this IM from a friend. This one's on loan for me. And I'm thinking, racking my brain, I can get it at a good price, used, in beautiful shape, but I don't think I will. Just because for exactly that fact. Now, and your situation might be different. This might be a top of the line for you and be a keeper and be endgame. That is quite possible. For me, and the stuff that I have in my gear, in my case that my dailies that I pick up, I wouldn't necessarily pick up the Monarch MKIII for a session, I think, even if I bought it. That's the way I feel about this set. So I've been racking my brain, is like, should I buy it? But I don't think I will. Nor would I wouldn't buy the Hype 10 either. So I have the Pen-On 10th anniversary. If I wanted a more energetic set with, in my opinion, better bass, I'd pick up the 10th anniversary. Or if I wanted something more mid-forward, again, more mid-bass and attack that I personally love, I'd pick up my SoundRhyme DTE 900, which are also both less expensive sets. And it doesn't matter about the price for that. I'm just talking about enjoyment versus what I would pick up and use, right? So again, I like a bunch of different things. My Soft Ear Twilights is my reference standard for tonality and timbre and what I think things should sound like. And that's what I go back to. Same as the Pen-On Quattro, that the 4 dynamic drivers for the mid tonality, to listen to what I think mids are sounding very, very, very good on that set. Again, not happy with the bass, that clamshell. For me, it's just not so great. And you figure out why. So in like dynamic drivers like the Twilight and some of my favorite sets where the dynamic driver is just tuned and firing into the chamber. It's not being pumped out through a little tube to kind of blend in with the rest of the tubes and the rest of the drivers and then mixed into your ear canal. It's actually tuned inside of the shell. And that's why, like in the Twilight or even the Oravetti OD200, the Dunu Falcon Ultra, all those IMs, because of the single dynamic and the way that dynamic driver is tuned with the shell and the shell is working with it, you get a bigger sense of space, and I think you get better tonality. Now that really, if you listen to like the Plunge Audio Unity, where Simon Fisk has taken I can't reveal too many of his secrets, but he does something where he takes there's no tubes. You use your shell as your tuning chamber, like a sort of like a speaker cabinet, sort of. But you're using that to create all the sounds inside of the chamber, and then you're sending it out through a large nozzle, not going through little tubes. And he does it in a way that it does time alignment, right? So your bass moves slower than high frequencies, right? So if you look at high-end home speakers where they're kind of angled, right? So you got the woofers on the bottom, and they're a bit slower, and then it's kind of arced, where you got the mids and the highs kind of back a little bit. They're just time aligning that ever so slightly manually, right? Because they can't really do it electronically at that point, where you could if you used part of a crossover network. I won't get into the techie details on that, but you can do it that way as well, or a combination thereof. But it's just helping to do it naturally. Same kind of idea. I've gone off on a tangent here. Let's conclude this bad boy. So, Monarch MKIII, who's this for? Well, this would be for somebody who wants a musical set but doesn't want to sacrifice technicalities. They want something that'll give them a fairly good sense of stage and correctness of instruments, and it does overall a pretty fabulous job. That's who it's for, and it's a kilobuck, so it's $1,000 on this set, so it's not cheap, but you are going to get a high level of performance. Again, for me, if I had a wish list, I wish that they would have added in the mid bass like the H10 was using, the Hype 10. I really love that presentation of that bass, where, yes, not a huge fan of just the clamshell drivers firing through a tube, where you're now supplementing it with the BA bass. That works. For me, the tuning of the bottom end of the Monarch MKIII doesn't so much. I actually want to listen to the Mark II, because I think it's just a single dynamic driver. I'm not really sure, to tell you the truth. I have to look into it as well. And that's probably what I would look for. For me, I think I'm going to try and find a Mark II, and to see if the bass is a bit different than the Mark III. So that's it for now. I hope you get a good sense of what I thought of this driver. Overall, it is a standout IM, and I'm being critical on this IM. But I really wanted to present to you maybe some how I heard it, because again, lots of, and it was funny because after I wrote my notes, so my review was done. I'm not going to change that. I went and read some other reviews, and it was kind of interesting going, the bass is standout and the stage is mind blowing, and it's like, I think people need to know that, because all that sounds wonderful, but if you pay $1,000 for this set, is that what you're going to get? And I don't think so. And you got to compare that to what else is out there on the market. So I wanted to present to you of kind of how realistically that I think it presents. And again, subjective for me, right? So it's always important also to talk about tips, sources, even cables to a certain extent. For me, again, I went through the gamut of tips. That's first, right? But in the end, I chose, again, the Divinus Velvet tip. It really works well for this IM. In the end, unlike the H10, where I kind of wanted to introduce a bit of the gold to add some thickening to the mids and kind of reduce that a little bit, I kind of went the opposite way with the Monarch MKIII. So I kind of chose, in this particular case, an 8-core SPC graphene cable that I found from EPZ. Kind of a strange find, but really liked this cable. And that's where I ended up on this IM. And I also liked it on a resolving source like the XD05 with the ESS. But again, just like the H10, I think it does better on a warmer source. And in this case, it was the Shanling M8. So 40 minutes in, remember I love you, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Cheers.